over and over again. And if you don't have a good understanding of it, you're not going to be refereeing at your best. The way I approach it, and if you're a note taker, by all means, get out pad and pencil and write stuff down. The way I approach it is that you need to know these, but there are some tricks to knowing all of them. So the first thing to know is that the group 1 is kind of the minor. Those are like the little, like, oh, that's your yellow card for the bout. It goes away after the bout is done. Yellow and red cards. Those are, they used to actually be called minor. I've been refereeing so long that they've gone through many evolutions of what they're actually called, but these are the group 1 penalties. Group 2 penalties are direct to red, directly to red. So they're more serious things because they are instantaneous red. And then the group 3 and the group 4, those are behavioral. Some of those you will not approach because they're out of your pay grade. That's what they say in the States, at least, that you don't touch those things like doping. I, as a referee, am never going to approach doping because that's another organization's deal to find out if people are taking illegal substances to enhance their performance. If I ever find a button in an FA, I've never found a button in an FA, but if I ever find one, I'm not going to probably be issuing that black card. The technical committee is going to be issuing that one. I'm not touching. There's a button in the FA, somebody else is dealing with it. And there are some that you just don't deal with as a referee in reality because it's for somebody else to make that decision. And those are really kind of the big broad strokes. Now, when I'll give my husband credit. When I was studying for the FIE to get my FIB in foil and in saber, I was studying the rules and I was confusing myself and I'm trying to remember them in French because a little bit of French. I speak fencing French, you know, en garde, prête, aller, all that stuff. And he said, well, why don't you just remember what the group 2 reds are? Because if you can remember what the group 2 reds are, because I've had people give a jostling as a red, and it's not one of those 6. There are exactly 6 group 2 reds. So that's the first thing I want you to think about is, if you're a referee who's been refereeing a lot, what are those 6 group 2 reds? Because if you can remember those, when something else happens, you'll say, oh, well, that's less severe than the group 2 reds that I know, therefore it must be a yellow card. So the group 2 reds are use of the unarmed weapon hand. Okay, arm or hand. So that a lot of people think of that as parry with the back arm. I'm parrying and then I hit. That's an instantaneous red card. It is also for offense and defense. So if I grab my weapon and help, it is for offense and defense. That is a red card instantaneously. That changed, oh gosh, I want to say like 15, 20 years ago. They changed it to be, it used to be a yellow. I'm so glad they changed it to a red. So an interruption of a bout for an unclaimed injury or cramp not confirmed by a doctor. The medical staff that is provided by the tournament is the person determining that. So sometimes you're not the person determining it. That is a red card. So if I go, oh, my shoulder hurts, and then the doctor's like, there's nothing wrong. That is a red card. Absence of control mark. So if I come to the strip and I don't have a stamp in my mask, I don't have a stamp on my glove, oh my goodness. You know, in saber now, it takes more time to figure out that all the stuff is inspected than the bouts take. So, but you got to make sure everything's got their inspection mark. If it doesn't have an inspection mark, that's actually technically a red card. So you've got to make sure that you're checking inspection marks. That's an instantaneous red. Now, there's also, if you don't have your name or your country colors on your uniform, this is something I would recommend. And it's supposed to be a red card. It's supposed to be a red card for every bout. So say they just don't have it, it's a red card for every bout. But some bout committees and some DTs will tell you, we had a lot of snow and nobody's using their own equipment and we're okay that the name on the back of their jacket doesn't match. But that is, again, not your call. You go to the DT or you go to the bout committee because they call it force majeure, which means a major force or whatever you call it. Yeah, that's the interpretation. Ask the DT. I was at an international tournament where the vendor ran out of ink. So everybody's name was very, very light colored on the back of their lames and their uniforms. the DT said it was okay because the vendor had run out of ink. So there can be reasons for them to not have country colors or names, and ask your head referee or ask your DT, your bout committee chair. So we're now on the fourth thing that is in that group 2. Deliberate touch not on opponent. So if you are ever refereeing and somebody tries to stop the clock by hitting off the side of the strip, we've all seen it, maybe at least once in our career, that is actually a group 2 red. You can give a red card for somebody doing that. Now, we also know that people's technique is not always fantastic. So if they take a wide parry and they hit the table, that's not deliberate touch not an opponent. They just, maybe they're learning their parries and they hit something off the side. That's different than halt, halt, halt. And if they hit the strip off the side of the strip, if it's a grounded and earth pieced, that actually is a red card. They're not allowed to do that. The last one is dangerous, violent, or vindictive blow with guard or pommel. And this blow with guard or pommel is to anywhere on the body. This is something that a lot of people, they go, oh, blow to the mask. It does not have to be to the mask. It has to be what you consider to be a blow. Now, something that we could talk about, which is core is a halt in all 3 weapons. The person who moves last is the person who causes core. That person caused core. I do bunny fencers. Some people do these fencers. I do bunny fencers. That person caused core. So the person who moved last is the person who is almost always going to get a card possibly for core to avoid, which is a group 1. In this case, we're talking about a blow. I was refereeing once and a young man hit his opponent in the shoulder with his guard and dislocated his shoulder and was surprised that I gave him a group 2 red. And I'm like, yeah. The answer is often, I didn't do it on purpose. Well, on purpose is probably a different color card, right? That's probably, at the very least, a group 3, or a group 4. So if you're doing a blow on purpose, you probably should not be in the tournament, right? You're probably going to be kicked out. So this is a blow with guard or pommel that the circumstances created, and you know that it is not to render them unconscious, which I've actually seen from across the room. It was horrific. That's black card land, right? So blow with guard or pommel. They still include the pommel part. We have a lot of French grip épée fencers. I have never seen the pommel part. I've only seen blow with guard. So you have to watch for it. Now, when we get to the yellow cards, you're going to see that they've got like vindictive and violent stuff in there too. For me personally, when I see something that is dangerous or violent, if both people, sometimes in Sabre, for example, they start hitting really hard. And I will say things like, gentlemen, I need you to take it easy. I need you to lighten up. Because sometimes they don't realize that they're getting excited and they're hitting harder than maybe they should. So my point in saying that is, sometimes these things are preventable if a referee steps in and sees that something could escalate. That's one of the things we can do as a referee, is we can prevent giving really, really bad cards by making sure they understand that we see what's going on. And sometimes they don't realize it. Sometimes the distance gets really close in foil and they remise really hard. And, sometimes they just don't, it's just part of it. We're a combative sport. It's part of why it's so therapeutic, right? We hit each other for fun. It's a good thing about it. Another important thing about our penalties is that our penalty chart, this happens to be the para one, is an abridgment. So when you're looking at that penalty chart, actually, why don't we show it on our screen? Why don't we do a share screen and we'll show the penalty chart. And so there we go. And you'll see that there are these numbers to the side. You see the articles. So as you scroll, you'll see the whole bunch of articles right there. And these are where the full rules are. So this is just an abridgment. This is shorthand. You can see that there sometimes are many of the articles written there. And that means that more than one rule is being abridged in that penalty chart. I love the penalty chart because it tells us in a quick manner everything we need. If we continue to scroll, actually, go all the way to the bottom of the chart, you'll see that there's a key to it. And that key says the asterisk means that you annul a touch. All right, the little plus one, that's a special yellow in group 1 about entering the piece without permission. And you can see that it talks about the yellow card, the red card, the black card, and then the P cards, which are a different kind of card. They are not cumulative with the penalty chart, the T170. So if you also want to write down, this is really important, not just that they're abridgments, you might actually want to write down also that you give the cards from lesser to greater. So if I give a red card and somebody has also done a yellow card penalty, I'm going to be issuing their opponent 2 touches, but you give the yellow card, then the red. Okay. I've seen that error happen. So I guess we're back to me talking about stuff. Cards are not threats, by the way. They are things you apply. So you don't threaten the card. Oh, I'm going to give you a yellow card if you don't do blah, blah, blah. We don't do that. They are the rules and we issue them. We also don't throw them. I think that's funny when they say they're throwing cards. You know, it's not like we're American football where they've got a flag. That would be kind of fun, actually. Something to think about. Maybe we could do that. I'm kidding. We will not do that. In the very, very top of the penalty chart, it talks about if somebody doesn't show up. So if on the first call, they're not there. Now, FIE rules are different than USA fencing rules. You got to be there 10 minutes before. If you're a team, every single team member has got to be present when the referee is checking them in. So there are different rules for different situations, but basically the first call that you're not there is a yellow, minute, red. Third call is elimination. We used to call this a black card, and even in our penalty charts, it's got the little black shading, but it's not technically a black card, it's elimination, it's a scratch versus a black card, because in FIE, in FIE stuff, that means that there will be some sort of other penalty. You can be suspended from competition. I want to say now it's 60 active days, not that we have active days. We have some tournaments starting again, but it used to be 90 active days, but you know, there are different penalties for an actual behavioral black card or something like doping or manifest cheating or equipment, blah, 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 collusion, all that stuff. So we used to just say, oh, it's a black card, but it's not really, it's elimination, which is different than expelling somebody from a tournament. So in our group 1 penalties, remember it goes yellow, red, red, red. I've heard people say yellow to red to red to red, right? But sometimes they go yellow plus yellow equals red. And I'm like, no, yellow, red, 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 red. So you could have somebody lose about 5-0 because they've got a whole bunch of equipment that doesn't work, right? Because when somebody gets a red card, we give their opponent a point. So I'm going to highlight some of these rules. This penalty chart is something you should know backwards and forwards. This penalty chart is something that you will apply. This is going to be the most of what you apply when you referee. And I think a lot of times people aren't prepared for that because this is one of the things we have to do. The penalty chart and our refereeing is designed to make it equally fair for both people, not more fair for one or the other. And this is something I see sometimes. I see people being selective about when they apply the rules. And I'll use one of my favorite ones, which is covering target. So when I have been head referee for youth events, I gather all of my referees and I say, when somebody covers in foil, because at the youth level, you have little tiny people, their bibs go down to here, and when they get attacked, they go like this. If they're Y8, Y10, Y12, of course we apply the rules. We may, as we're doing a roll call, because remember, a roll call, bringing your pool together is required by the rules, we might say to them, so if you do this with your hand in front of your target, or if you hold on to your mask where the lame is, that's called covering target. You can't do that. If you do that, I'll have to issue a card. You don't say that's a bad thing. You don't put a judgment on these cards. You say, you warn them in the roll call. For young epee, I'm probably going to say, or even old epee, it doesn't matter the age on this one. They do the body cord pull, which is again another yellow, right? Touching electrical equipment. I'm going to say, guys, don't pull on that cord. I don't want to have to give you cards. So we're not trying to use the penalty chart to bludgeon our pools with the rules. The rules are there to protect everybody, to make it fair. So you can give a heads up in your roll call. Hey, if you do this with your backhand, I have to issue a card. I've been told by some people, oh, but they're little kids. We shouldn't issue cards. So when those little kids get to be 15, 16, 18, 22, at what point do we start applying the rules? Of course, we have to apply the rules. We just are not super mean about it, ever. Haha, you have a yellow. Don't do that. I would also like to say for a moment that I would advocate that you don't, I see my cards are in 3 different pockets, right? I say that you want to not stack your cards, because if I'm facing you and I'm issuing a yellow card, if I issue a yellow card for something like covering, of course I mime the touch covering. This is what the coach sees. So I have just given, according to the coach, a black card for covering target. Nobody's that tough, okay? So I like to put my cards in different pockets. My right hand is always the yellow because it's the easiest one for me to get to. I also, from a practical stand, I always do the remote with my left hand. So the yellow card is easiest from my right hand. These are all practical things that you need to do as a referee in your application of the penalty chart, right? So we always give the rules equally. So if somebody crashes into another person, does jostling, let's talk about jostling. If I was here, I would have been here if this person hadn't been in the way. That's where my flesh probably would have ended. This person probably jostled. That's another group 1 card. I am not going to go over every single one because we do not have the time. In the certified referee seminar, we go through all of them. In this setting, I'm going to give you homework and make you do the homework. So you have not lived a good life until you have had somebody jostle. This is the person that jostled, and this is how you give the yellow card. You have a yellow card for jostling. It is the funnest yellow card you will ever give because they jostled themselves, didn't they? But they also jostled their opponent. Jostling is something that's one of those very difficult subjective ones that people are always asking me about. So I hope that helps you frame what you need to do, okay? When we are applying things like delay of bout, I've used the para cards, they actually have a false start rule in wheelchair fencing. We don't apply a false start rule in Sabre. We're applying either delay of bout or disobedience, depending on which one you want to say. So if somebody does a false start, a lot of tournaments are designed to, first time somebody does a false start, it is a verbal warning for both for a lot of tournaments or just that person. Next time, excuse me, hiccup. Next time there's a false start, yellow card. Next time there's a false start, red card. In wheelchair fencing and para fencing, they're now changing their branding. It is, I don't want to say normal, but it is something that very typically happens that a false start ends a bout. And it's most frustrating for the athletes when it's at 4-4. So this leads me into, if it's 4-4 or 14-14, we can't choose at that moment to not apply the rules. I see this sometimes, but for the last touch, we don't want to, no. If they've been jostling their opponent, if they've been doing core to avoid, if they've been covering, if they cover for the last touch, maybe there are a few referees who are like, oh, cool, I get to give a red card. No, I am not that way, and I know a lot of us are not. We don't want to end on a card. But if we don't apply the rules, equally throughout the entire bout, that's not fair. If it's good for the first touch, it's good for the last touch. So you can't be selective in when you're going to apply a yellow. Oh, well, they already have a yellow because their foil didn't work. It's on the table. So that means that I'm not supposed to apply the rules? We have a difficult job ahead of us. It is our job to make it equally fair for both. And I've looked at fencers who've been frustrated with me because I've had to end a bout on a penalty for them. And they're like, well, that's not fair. And I'm like, so if he did it, would you want me to apply it? And I've churned a lot of minds on going, oh my goodness, yes. Sometimes I ask those people that are quizzical about the rules, so when are you going to become a referee? Because it would be really good for them to do that. If you're frustrated about the rules and you're frustrated about the application of the rules, become a referee and you will have far more compassion about them. So we are, as referees, making sure nothing is an advantage or a disadvantage or unsafe. So I'm actually going to talk about a couple of rules that we don't apply typically as cards, but are in the rules. So an example is undressing on the strip. There is actually a rule, let's see if I can find it in the US one, undressing on the strip. It's about 3/4 of the way down. This is not if somebody goes to pull, I call it the body cord dance, when you tie the body cord and then you pull it through. If it gets stuck, they're not violating the rules to do that. That's totally cool. They need to unzip their jacket and whatnot. This was, I believe, started because people were delaying stuff with something. I don't remember the origin of the rule, but if they're changing their body cord because it's not working, that's not undressing on the strip. Another one that we don't typically apply is hair. Now my hair, this is my new hairstyle thanks to COVID. I'm not getting my hair cut very often, but hair on the target is important to make sure they don't have their hair on the target. I've been told this is a picky rule. Why are you so picky? I'm picky because as a foil person, I did a beautiful feint deceive and I landed on somebody's hair and it was an off target. And that is not one of the circumstances where we will allow for substitution of target. I've also been at a state championships in New Jersey and watched a saber girl do a parry repost, hit the girl's ponytail, no light, one light for the other person. My athletes weren't involved and I flipped my lid. I was like, she can't have her hair on her target. It's not fair. They have an unfair advantage because they're covering target with their hair. So I love it when people are like, oh, the ponytail, they're not going to hit there anyway. Really? Okay. That's not fair still. It's covering the target. So if it's a little teeny tiny bun and it's barely on the collar, I'm like, cool, that's off the target. But if it's a big old ponytail, no. In Saberland, people think that that's a foil rule. In Saberland, if you've ever seen Marielle Zagunis, she's fixed her hair. I've watched her in World Cups. They've made her fix her hair. So if they're going to make our top athletes do it, why not have that continue all the way to our beginners and our new people? In épée, I want to make sure it's not a distraction. Sometimes the little ponytail goes boing, 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 and I'm like, ooh, and I'm afraid that the tip is going to get caught in there. So and actually a very good referee said, oh, I just call it a distraction, and I make them tie it up, and I'm like, ooh, I'm stealing that. So anything you've learned here, if you have other things that resonate with you, let me know. I love learning new things, and I love how other people's brains work, so I want to know. But I love that idea of a distraction. I won't let braids be going down the back in épée, because if their name is on their back, then your name is supposed to be clear. And even if they have their name on the leg, I've actually seen a flesh in épée get caught in the entire braid. So we've got to make sure we're maintaining safety. But hair on the target, hair non-conforming, is one of those rules that we very rarely give a yellow card for. I had an event. It was a youth event, Y14, that's 14 and under in the States. And these two girls were foil girls, and their hair had been coming off in the 3 minutes of bouting. And I had been refereeing these two girls in the DEs, and now they're in the gold. And I basically said to them, ladies, I'm done with the hair breaks. You have to figure out how to have your hair survive 3 minutes of this foil bout. Make it happen. We can't let them use it as a delay tactic or as a, I need a break tactic or I need to figure out what's going on. I told them, I have never given this card. I'm going to give this card if your hair doesn't stay off the target for 3 minutes. Now, the funnest part was watching the male coaches kind of like freak out because they didn't know how to help their athletes. Sometimes we have to get our jollies, our chuckles somewhere else. But yes, hair off the target and hair nonconforming is a very rare card for us. We're not really giving it, but we are applying it, and that's the difference. Another one that we don't usually apply, unless the person is I've applied it a couple times, is the bend of the blade. We usually just tell people straighten the blade. We don't give a card right off the bat. Now, I've had a stubborn person who thought that it was silly that I was applying the rules, didn't straighten their epee straight enough. And I went, you don't want me to test that epee. What do you mean? I'm like, because it's not legal. Yes, it is. Rule of thumb that we use for bend of the blade and foil is our pinky. This is Saber's bend about. So it's what, 1 centimeter and 4 centimeters. And in Saber, the bend's got to go this way. So not like this. And none of them can be an S curve. So they have to fix an S curve. The rule of thumb is if you can see a bend in foil or epee, it's probably not legal. In my fencing days, apparently I asked a referee, can her blade be as illegal as mine? Because that's too much bend. I would like straighten my blade. Almost nobody's bend is perfectly legal, and that's okay. If it's like a centimeter and a little bit extra, that's normal. It's when it's a big hook. Okay, so I'm going to use a visual aid. This is Baby Yoda. Okay, this is Baby Yoda. And this is Tom. Baby Yoda could hit Tom's hand without doing anything because of the bend of Baby Yoda's blade. Remember, our base function is to make it an even playing field for both athletes. So a bend in the blade is actually an advantage. Some coaches are like, oh, it makes the blade shorter, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, it does matter. When I was fencing foil, the rules were different. I think it was 3 centimeter bend when I was fencing foil. I used to have a blade that I would reserve to fence my left-handed opponents because it was so curved and I could hit their ribs better. But I was within the rules and I was using it to help me as an advantage. Now that blade would have been carded, it wouldn't have been legal. So you ask the fencer straighten their blade. If they straighten the blade and it's still bent too much and you are saying on guard ready, then you can give a card, but we very rarely give the bend of the blade card. We usually let them straighten it. I want to make another note about covering and substitution on side by side. Sala Frajani is doing a fantastic seminar, and he had I added this based on his words, covering a substitution of valid target during the fencing frost. So if I'm way, way out of distance, I can have my hand on my target pulling, blah, blah, blah. But if I am within the ability to have a fencing cross with my opponent, that's when you card for covering. I see a lot of newer referees, they card for covering when the person's not even in remote distance. The tips aren't anywhere near each other. They can't hit each other. No. So this is another thing that I wanted to say about covering. When you are, let me make sure I'm covering what I want to cover. When you are issuing yellow cards, sometimes I can't say it's like parenting, but you want to be consistent. As I said before, we don't have any special moments. So if somebody tries to argue with you, we have unjustified appeal, which has 2 meanings. It could also have, it's got several rules that are applied, 3, I believe. One is arguing. This is when somebody argues with you. You don't instantaneously get that yellow card, first group yellow card. You have to make sure you're communicating to the person who maybe is being a little too confrontational, that they need to respect space. Now we have social and physical distancing things. So we've got a whole, thanks to the pandemic, a whole other kind of consequence that can happen. But if somebody is pushing your limits, have words around how to create a respectful setting. I sometimes say, I'm sorry, I can't talk about this now. The athlete is the one who can ask questions. The athlete is the one who has the rights. So if a coach or a parent is yelling at you, the athlete is the one with the rights. After this whole pool is done, maybe we can discuss this on a philosophical level. If somebody's arguing with you, they're looking to get an advantage, and it's our job to make sure there is no advantage. So I think you were thinking I was going to go through every single rule, and now I'm just kind of picking the rules. You don't pick the rules when you apply them. You pick the rules when I'm teaching them, because I don't have the time to teach you all of them. So group 1 penalties, yellow, and then every subsequent time is red. They go away after the bout is done. Group 2 are those 6 magic ones, which are instantly to red. Now the weird one, the weird annulment, I have my my format for when I teach it, is absence of equipment control marks is an annulment. And that basically would be an accident. Somebody comes to the strip and they don't have something inspected and they were supposed to. So you're supposed to annul the touch that they got with that. Remember, we can only annul one touch. Annul the touch that you got with that and then make them replace it. So that's just an accident thing, but otherwise, I don't know. I don't know what else. So we are now on group 3 penalties. I call these red, yellow to black, meaning it's red for the athlete on the strip, yellow for a spectator, but it can go directly to black. So maybe some of you out there are current athletes. Maybe you guys have, maybe you're coaches. I'm going to give you powerful words to help you as a referee and as an athlete. So say somebody is yelling things that are very distracting off the side of the strip. As a fencer, I can ask my referee to come here. I can lift up my mask and I can say the following words. Ma'am, that person is disturbing my order. They will know that you've read the rules. They will know that you know a little bit about the wording of the rules. And now you as an athlete have the power to say if something is disturbing your order, meaning it's a distraction, meaning it's, there was one coach I knew who would like, and it was just like this weird rhythmic thing and it was really loud. And then there, yeah, that you, I'm sorry, sir, that person is disturbing my order. Blink, 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 right? These are powerful words. Disturbing order is what you as the referee determine is disturbing order. If the person is hooked up, they are still a fencer. That can still be a red card issued. If the person unhooks, they lose their right to protest or appeal, right? To get that last touch and all, right? You have to stay hooked up. But if they're not on the strip, they're spectators. So say you're reffing a pool and a fencer disturbs order. If they're not hooked up on that strip, they are a spectator. All right. There are group 3 penalties. There's a group 3 penalty called dishonest fencing. The only example I can give on dishonest fencing is I'm fencing you and I say, oh, your shoelace is untied, and then buzz, I hit you, and then I get a red card and that touch gets annulled because dishonest fencing has an annulment. That's one of the very few examples I have of that. We also have a publicity code, which is a really good cure for insomnia if you are having trouble sleeping. Oh, I could have used this the other day. And I call the publicity code the NASCAR rules. This is another set of rules that you're probably not going to apply. You should have awareness of what makes something a mark versus an advertisement, especially if you're refereeing internationally. And if you have something that looks not right, go to your DT. They're the ones who are probably going to apply a Publicity Code red, which is a touch for your opponent. And you'll also see the parameters for what would create a black card in that circumstance. So if you are on the strip, group 3 is a red. If you are off the strip or unhooked, you're just an unhooked person, you are a spectator. One of the important ones I've seen get violated, and then people don't realize it's a violation, is warming up or training without equipment. And that is a group 3 yellow. I saw a coach, he was allowing a 10-year-old foil person to do a feint deceive on him in the minute break of a Y10 bout. And he didn't have a mask on. So this young athlete doesn't know how to tie their shoes, but the coach is saying, go ahead, do a feint deceive on me. This is the right action. And they don't have a mask on. This same coach, he asked me if that's an FIE rule or is that a USA fencing rule? And I'm like, it's a rule so that people don't get their eyes poked out. And yes, it's an FIE rule. It's a USA rule. This is one of the weird ways that I've applied this. So yes, a person taking a lesson should have a mask on. The minimum equipment that they prefer is glove, mask, weapon. I prefer chest plate and plastron for a girl and just a plastron for a guy, because every once in a while they make a mistake and I might hit them. So I want to make sure they're safe. But the absolute minimum is mask, glove, weapon. That is also, in this case, for the coach. And I have applied that. I have given a yellow card to a coach. He was super silly, telling this kid who can't tie his shoelaces to hit him during the minute break of a DE bout. So in group 3, we have anti-sporting behavior. In group 4, we have offense against sportsmanship. So how do we determine if it's a group 4 or a group 3? It's what you write down on the black card form. That's what it is. There is nothing in the rules. One of the things that they say about offense against sportsmanship in that abridgment in the black card of the group 4 is that throwing of equipment is a black card. They've specified it. They've codified it. They've made it a rule. So if somebody takes their mask and throws it, that is a black card. If somebody throws their stuff against the floor so vehemently that they create sparks on the concrete, that's a black card. I had somebody question, well, he didn't really throw it. And I'm like, it made sparks on the floor. You sure that's not throwing? You positive? That is black and white. It is a black card, throwing of equipment. So I'm kind of giving you highlights of this penalty chart. This is the thing you need to know. You need to know it. Now, relative to fencer equipped with electronic communications device, I've seen fencers have their ear pods in and they go to hook up and they're, oh, shoot, sorry. And there was their headphones. They were listening to their tunes. They weren't trying to do this. I've seen people be real card happy. Oh, I could give a black card. Don't be happy about giving a black card. Never be happy about giving a black card. Issuing a black card is something that is earned by that person, and it is almost never a surprise to anybody who is there. Because black cardable behavior is often very, very clear. Now we have people who have hearing aids, and one of my referees is a younger person, has a hearing aid, and a parent walks up and goes, you were talking on your phone. And this person goes, I'm sorry, this is my hearing aid. Hang on, let me put it in. And she goes, oh, she forgot. She didn't realize that the referee actually was a hearing aid. She thought it was some sort of Bluetooth device for talking to somebody. It was a hearing aid. So we've got different things that we're now working with in our world technology-wise. Somebody accidentally going in with their ear pods, their AirPods, don't worry about that. Make them take it off. If they leave them on and you see a coach doing something, then maybe, yeah. But most times it's headphones and hearing aids, and it is not communication device. Falsification of inspection marks is again something you would go directly to the technical committee. The armors and the tech committee in the US are now doing asymmetrical stamps so that make sure that things can't be falsified. We were for a while testing French grip épées, and they would have a mark on them. Now we spot test them, but it became like an argument amongst, especially the épée refs, of like, if somebody removes that, is that falsifying equipment? Is that, you know, like where is that in the rules? But we've also had body cords be inspected and have the inspection mark fall off. So as an athlete, you can protect yourself by saying, oh, that's right, this body cord, the inspection mark fell off. I better go change my cord or get that one inspected right away. So stuff like that happens. Don't use the rules as a sledgehammer. Use the rules to guide the bout so that it's equally fair for both people. Refusal of a fencer to fence another competitor, individual or team, properly entered. I prefer my circumstance that I like to explain, which is I was head referee for a youth event, and in Y12, the 12 and under, sometimes there are growth spurts, right? So they're one super tall, one hasn't had their growth spurt yet. And this little girl was about to fence a very tall girl, a tall 12-year-old, and she was afraid. And she goes, she hit so hard. And I was watching her. She certainly wasn't hitting hard on purpose. It wasn't deliberate. It wasn't brutal. It wasn't any of it. But I could see how a smaller person, a smaller human, would find it scary. And she was like, I don't want to fence her. I'm scared. And I went, well, and I showed her the rule. I said, I don't want to have to black card you. So I want you to be brave. So here was this girl who had to fence her in the top 8. She got 7 touches on the eventual winner. And that is where you can help athletes understand that the rules are there to sometimes make you feel brave and make you realize, if I don't do this thing, this is really not sportsmanlike. So use the rules to also educate the athletes. I have applied hit during or after a fall, and somebody goes, is that a rule? And I go, yeah, and shoot, twitches right there. And I show it to them. And they go, oh, be darned, look at that. So having a copy of this, when I travel, I have an extra copy so that I'm in the plane and I'm bored. I just kind of study it. But having this also, and the nerd that has it in French and English, because some people don't understand English, they should or could understand French, that will help people categorize what are the rules. Because I'll smile when I say this because I am also a coach. Not all the coaches know the rules. Sometimes they're very creative on what they're calling rules. Oh, that's not a rule. Yeah, it is. And so having a copy of the current penalty chart, because it changes from time to time. The most recent change was reversal of the shoulder and foil, which is no longer a penalty, and it was on there. So make sure it's current. Make sure you have the P cards. And the last thing I want to talk about is the P card penalties. I went over all of them either 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago, I believe, for this channel, for Side by Side. The P card penalty cards are not cumulative to our Group 1, Group 2 in particular. So if we're fencing and it's 1-1, and then you get another touch, 2-1, 1 minute without a bout, 1 minute without a touch, I would get a P yellow card. But if I already had something like a tip screw missing, it's not a red card, it's just a P yellow. They are 2 different things. We do issue a yellow card if for 15 seconds people are not engaging at the very end of a bout. And we've all seen where they're stepping back and they're not fencing. The FIE and USA Fencing has adopted this as well. You need to keep fencing. Don't stop fencing. And that actually is a Group 1 yellow, they call it. They want us to apply delay of bout disobedience kind of thing. So that would be cumulative if somebody has an equipment that's been confiscated for the bout. So review, learn. You can, as a referee, issue a black card for the competition, which would be like the Y10 Sabre, and then the exclusion from the tournament would be if they did something really bad, egregious, and that could be for the entire weekend of events. NCAA tournament, the national championships for the universities. If you get a coaching yellow on the first day, you're on that coaching yellow, meaning if you do something bad, disturbing order or whatever, that is entirely one tournament. So certain tournaments have certain rules. Somebody can do something bad enough that they are done from the tournament versus the competition. So it's 12:48, and I don't want to keep going on and on. I want you to have your experience with the penalty chart be something that you start right now, especially if you're a new referee. If you're a seasoned referee, it is something that you will be surprised at how much you apply it more and more and more, and how also you'll also become more aware of that you're there to make it equally fair for both, because you can't just decide that you're going to apply something for one side and not the other. So I guess that's it.
Amazing tips and tricks today, Lisa. Thank you. I mean, I don't get enough of all the information I receive from you. So thank you for all that, because you make it very practical. It's not just reading the rules, like on the strip, the experience we build from it. So appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you,
and
everybody.
your first time you're issuing a red for pair with the back arm, you're almost a little scared. First time I've been refereeing 35 years, 36 years, I don't even know. I've issued 3 black cards. One is an assessor, one is a side judge,
Wow.
one is a head referee, and one is a referee. So I have 3 different roles, and those are the only, I don't want to issue another one ever. But some people think of it as like almost like, notches on their belt, like they're a gunslinger. I've got 22 black cards. No, do not be that.
I was laughing here because the false start with 14-14 brought memories to me, because I carded on that one, and I was like, sorry, kiddo, you just lost a bout, and it was Junior Olympics, and they brought the DT and everything, and she's like, she warned you, she actually gave you a yellow for it, like down the road, like it was 7-5 or something. So you were warned verbally, you were warned with a yellow card, and now you were given a red card. So, but
I had a similar circumstance with somebody inside the enclosure, kept getting warned, and then was surprised.
Oh.
Black cards and red cards are rarely surprising. They are very, very much, you know when they're going to happen. And it's our job, I feel like it's our job to try to prevent them, not by being easy or flexible, but by being rational. Mm-hmm. It's one of the most difficult tests we have as a referee is to stay calm in the face of all the excitement. And so we have a difficult balance when somebody's excited and they're fencing and they're asking a question and their heart rate's going.
Absolutely.
We can't reflect that. We have to stay calm. And we also have to remember that maybe they need a second chance to ask their question. Why wasn't that my parry? Is different than, can you reconstruct the action? I can reconstruct the action, but when I think we have our greatest problems when the referee forgets what it was like to be the fencer.
Yep. So not to be too mean or mean at all, and not to be too flexible. This is the lesson we learned today. And knowing the rules, learn your rules. And like you said, you read them every flight you go to a tournament. So read them, learn them, watch our side-by-side channel. So to get more info.
And the Fencing Referee YouTube channel.
Absolutely. And then also we're looking forward to our official certified online referee clinic with Lisa Campi-Sapery starting from next week. See you guys.
Yep. So I thank you all for your attention, and I hope you learned something. Tell yourself 2 good things about yourself every day. And thanks to Side by Side for allowing me this opportunity to help you guys learn about refereeing.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. And I would like to thank the crowd. Thank you, everybody, for joining from Zoom and from on Facebook and on the YouTube channel as well. Thank you, everybody.